Hello, I hope this video helps you with the instructions in terms of how to handle the new pre-K guidelines and the way it's set up in Forethought. Currently, pre-K teachers have something that looks like this, where it just says pre-K guidelines right up here at the top, and then each individual subject or standard is divided. For example, here social and emotional development, language and communications, etc. And then here are the units down here below. However, now that the pre-K guidelines have changed, there has been a change on Forethought as well. I went ahead and imported the new Texas pre-K guidelines that should be used, and each one of these is individualized now. So depending on how you want to handle the situation, in essence what's going to happen is pre-K teachers will have to change their schedule or their lesson planner here and add the new pre-K guidelines. Again, really depending on how you want to follow through with that. Because what that entails is all of these units will have to be moved over to the new guidelines or recreated. I don't know, however it is that you want to handle that situation. But in order for pre-K teachers now to use the new guidelines and the way it's set up now is they'll have to come down here to change my settings, my schedule. They will select their lesson planner. They don't want to add a new schedule. They can if they want to, but that's going to cause some headaches. And I'll come back and I'll add a schedule so that you can see what the difference is. But what they want to do, ideally, is select your lesson planner. You should only have one. Edit that schedule. And at this point, if you want to add the year, you want to change whatever, you can change it there. Normally, I try to tell teachers, leave it as generic as possible so that you're not tied to a year or anything like that. So now here, we're going to remove this pre-K guideline. Now please understand, when you remove the pre-K guidelines, any lessons will be gone as well. You're not going to have access to those lessons anymore. So I'm going to head and remove the entry. Now that doesn't mean that they can't go back. They can go back last year and they can look at their lessons. But from this point forward, those units won't be under there unless they've been moved. So what I want to do is I want to add an entry. And of course, I want the course with learning standards. And I'm going to pick elementary. And now I'm going to go here to pre-K. And you'll notice here how the new pre-K guidelines have been added as individual lessons or individual subjects. So I'm going to have to rinse and repeat. So here's reading. Next. Next. Add an entry, course with learning standards. It's always going to default to that. Now I'm going to add writing. Fine arts, I'm not sure if you need that one or not, but I'm going to go ahead and add it. Add an entry. Always wanted a course with learning standards, so just next. Language and communication for ELL. Next. Next. As you can see, this part of it is very repetitive. So you're always going to want to add a course with learning standards. That's just always going to be just a next. And honestly, at this point, if you want to change it, you really can change the title of it here and just call it ELA or whatever it is you want to call it. But for now, I just kept it the same term that was listed by the state when I uploaded those TEKS. Add another entry. And remember, this is always a course with learning standards. Next. Math. Next. Again, change the title if you want. I just leave it as is. Next. Rinse and repeat. Add an entry. Course with learning standards. Physical development. Next. And again, they can change the title if they want. Just call it PE. Next. Rinse and repeat. Add an entry. Next. Science. Next. Remember, they can change it. Next. Add an entry. next. Social and emotional, next. Next. Add an entry, next. Social studies, next. Change the title if you want, next. Add an entry. And yes, this is very tedious, but again, it's how it is now currently set up. Next. Next. And at this point, if teachers, like for example, let's say they teach math first, so maybe they want their lesson plans, they can move that up to the top. And vice versa. Let's say fine arts is something that they teach at the end of the day or not at all. They can always move that down as well. So here's where the teacher wants to sort of customize the look of their lesson planner. So I'm going to go ahead and click next because I have all the subjects that I need. And at this point, I don't want to change my schedule anymore. I've already changed it. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And this is the most important part. Even though it says you're done here, you're really not done. If I click anywhere out here, down here, it doesn't save my schedule. What's super important is where it says you're done is that you select begin using forethought. So I will select begin using forethought. Now notice, I'm going to go back to August 1st. Remember when I first showed you at the very beginning how we had this pre-K guidelines here? And they have all the units, etc. Now, I left this here on purpose because I want to make sure that teachers understand that even though they've edited their schedule, anything that they've done in the prior years in terms of lessons, they will still be there. Unless they go in and delete that entry one day at a time, those lesson plans will always be there. You saw that I changed my schedule. You saw that I changed everything. But however, what I had done previously is still here. So let me go to the next day, or one of these days that is not bolded. And now you'll notice I have all of my all of my subjects here. So when I click here, now I'm going to see the pre-K guidelines for math. I click in here, pre-K guidelines for reading. Click in here, pre-K guidelines for writing, etc. So every single one of those subjects that you saw me enter, now pre-K teachers will have the ability to plan by subject. And the other thing I did is on the back end is I went ahead and created a sort of template. So if you want to move over, for example, all the math lessons or the units that pertain to math, I've already set up a small template where your curriculum writers can go in there and add whatever they need to add to the units as per Frog Street or whatever it is that Frog Street has set up for them. But teachers, all those pre-K teachers now, in order to get this sort of layout where they have each individual subject, will have to do exactly what it is I just showed you. They have to go into change my settings, my schedule, select their lesson planner, edit the schedule, and then remember, they've got to do that add an entry, rinse and repeat type of process that you just painfully sat through. Now, earlier I did mention they should only have one lesson planner. If they want to have two, for some reason they decide, no, I want to keep my pre-K guidelines there and I want to add the new guidelines. What's going to happen now is if I add a schedule, so let's say I have my old pre-K guidelines, I want to hold on to it for whatever reason, because again, remember I showed you that even though I edited the schedule and I did away with the pre-K guidelines, my lessons are still there. However, some teachers still don't feel comfortable doing that, which is fine. So if I want to add a schedule, so this is my pre-K, I want to add the pre-K guidelines, so I'm going to add the schedule, and I'm going to call this one specifically pre-K guidelines, which was the old term, or the old pre-K guidelines. So I'm going to add an entry, of course with learning standards, next. Elementary pre-K. And here's that pre-K guidelines that most pre-K teachers have currently. Next. Next. I've already added the entries. I'm done. That's the only entry I'm going to add because remember they were all bunched together at that point. Now I have two schedules. Here's where the problem arises. So I'm going to click next. And remember, am I done? Do I click out here? No, I need to click begin using forethought. So now I'm going to go again to a day that's not bolded right here on the 3rd. And this is what the teachers will have to do. If you have two schedules, every single day that you plan, you will need to tell forethought, which lesson planner do I want to use? Do I want to use this one? Now that one has all the breakdown. And then the next day I'm going to plan my lesson again. And I've got to select which one I want to use. Maybe I want to use this one. And some teachers don't have a problem doing that. Some teachers appreciate having the two schedules and they can go back and forth. You can go back and forth with one schedule as well. But again, some teachers are not comfortable with that. They prefer having the two schedules, and that's okay. That's something that I would totally leave up to the control of the teachers, especially when they're the ones that are writing the lesson plan. So whatever it is they're comfortable with. But really what I wanted to show you is that most of the pre-K teacher will have to change their schedules to add the new pre-K guidelines. I hope this makes sense and it helps with the lessons and with the training. If you have any questions, you know where to reach me. My cell number is 451-9664, and I will be forwarding my Port Isabel email address in a minute, so you'll also have that. I hope this really helps.